All right, and we're back. This is L.A. Kendrick with Who Are You Calling a Slave in 1844, Part 2. Weekly horror told from the House of Havoc, the Crib of Chaos. Let's jump right into it. Now, when last we spoke, Solomon was being pursued by the slave catchers hired by Drummond. And they're in hot pursuit. They actually have bloodhounds to help track him down. So he's got a decent lead, but because the area is so wide open, he can kind of hear them closing the gap. So he's got maybe a two mile lead on him. But because they know the area better than he does, they're making a lot of ground, a lot of headway on him pretty quickly. So he's passing through getting closer to the swamp area, and he's looking at the trees, and the trees look really almost as if they have souls, like they have tortured souls. And because it's a full moon, it's very well illuminated. So he's not having to look around or struggle through with his lantern as much as he thought he would. So he can see that they've got torches and lanterns and all this other stuff. He can see them off in the distance, and they're closing the gap on him. And he's thinking about all the horrors that might have happened. And as he's looking at those trees, what spirits and what souls were lynched and killed and hung from those particular branches. And he's just filled with horror. And he doesn't want that same thing to befall him, like it did his friend Fox, what befell Fox prior. And he's walking, and he's trying to catch his breath at this point because he's been running pretty heavily, pretty steady. And again, the gap is starting to close. But as he looks, he sees like this really rundown shack. And it's like the windows, the few windows that he can see are glowing. And in his mind, he's thinking, he's assuming that this is where the Buwaga lives, but he can't verify that. But like I said, it's heavily swamped area, so he's assuming that that's it. And as he goes by, he passes by, he can hear some shuffling in it, and then something takes off up into the trees, and he can hear this low guttural growl. So he's looking around. He's like, okay, yeah, this is definitely what it is, because he doesn't know anything else that would be out there in those swamps like that. Again, he's kind of new to the area. He doesn't really have a lot of intel on the wildlife that's there. But the Drummond's still in hot pursuit. And so they have like a snare. For some reason, there's a snare there, and it catches Solomon's leg. Not a bear trap, just a snare to slow him down. So he's being slowed down, and lo and behold, the bloodhounds are they're right there. The dogs have closed the gap. They've released the dogs on him. And before the dogs can attack and make contact with Solomon, all he can see is hands and a form grab the dogs, snap them, rip them in half, and throw them back on the trail. Now, this figure also snaps the snare stick that held Solomon's leg, snare trap that held Solomon's leg, and frees him. And all Solomon can see is steam coming off of this form and glowing red eyes. That's all he can see. And it's breathing heavily. And he's in shock, and he's afraid, because even though he knows the Bawaga, this is obviously what it is, he knows it's not supposed to kill him. It's still terrifying nonetheless. And he can see some of the scarring of the face, but he can see the four legs that are attached to this enormous body from the tortured slaves prior. And he knows, like, yeah, this is definitely something that would scare you to death, because how can something like this exist? And it just looks at him, and it tilts its head, and it tilts its head back the other way, and it looks at him. And then suddenly it snaps its head back to the right, because it can hear those the slave catchers coming. So they're like right there. They've closed that gap. really quickly. So it runs again and jumps up into the trees and starts using the trees to pursue, to cut them off and go and attack them and cut them off. So Solomon's free and he's walking around, but he hears a gunshot, and then he hears another gunshot, and then he's grazed by a bullet in his arm, so he falls against the tree and he hides himself and tries to get a location of where the gunshots and the bullets are coming from. So he's actually been flanked on both sides by two of the slave catchers. And he's telling them, hey, you guys, you don't have to do this. I'm all the way out. Let me go. Let me live. I don't want any more trouble. It's over. It's done. And of course, being the slave catchers that they are at that time, they tell him, nah, boy, you going one way in a body bag or up on that rope on that there branch. And Solomon's got his back to the tree, and he can see them coming. He can hear them coming from the left and to the right of him. So what he says is, he's like, okay, you guys need to let me go. Please let me go. I will fight you to the death. And he pulls out a knife. And all he can hear at that point is something huge drop out of the trees to the ground. And it grabs one of the men. The Bawaga grabs one of the men. And it runs that guy full speed into branches that are already sticking straight out. And it impales him through the eye sockets. And he pushes him head first even further till the branches break through the back of the slave catcher's skull. The other slave catcher starts trying to unload his gun, his rifle, on the Bawaga. And all it does is hit the flesh, and the Bawaga just smiles and laughs, and he shoots him again. And before he can make the third shot, the Bawaga, and get his weapon primed for the third shot, the Bawaga grabs him and just slams him to the ground and continuously stomps him in the chest. So much to the point where the individual's body has come up around the Bawaga's knee, and the Bawaga has to push him down, and his leg and his foot out of the chest that's been opened, the hole that's been opened in the slave catcher's chest. So that's 2 down. So Solomon takes off, following the map and following the stars, and the Bawaga jumps right back into the trees. Now, when Drummond comes up and he sees this sight, and he sees the guy hanging from the branch with his eye sockets impaled and the back of his head impaled as well, and the other individual gruesomely murdered as well, Drummond thinks that it's Solomon that's doing this. But one of the slave catchers say, no, man, this here land is cursed. There's supposed to be a demon out here, a redeemer that seeks vengeance for the slaves. There's a lot of blood out here in these here swamps and these here bayous. And Drummond, being the racist that he is, no, I don't believe in that damn shit there. That's folk fairy tale to scare us, so when these slaves do escape, that we won't pursue them in there. So one of the other guys asked him, well, then how do you explain these 2 gruesome murders right now? That guy's hanging pretty high off the trees. Don't think Solomon is that tall to put him that high up. And look at the hole that this guy's got in his chest. It's just his innards are hanging out. And look at the dogs, because they noticed the dogs as well. Look at the dogs. Look how they've been ripped in half. He did all this to 2 men and 2 bloodhounds. Drummond kind of concedes in his mind a little bit, but you know how that goes. He's so angry, and he's so hell-bent on bringing Solomon to justice and keeping his family name intact that he disregards all of that, and he and the 6 remaining slave catchers pursue. And and Solomon's way out. He's not too far out, but he's out enough, because now he's wading through the swamp water with the snakes and the gators and his lantern. But again, all he can see is freedom. He's just trying to get to freedom. But the Bawaga is still back there laying in wait for the men. So again, Drum and them are in hot pursuit, and they're really closing that gap, and Solomon can feel it. So what Solomon does, he just continues on, wading through the water, wading through the swamp water, looking for dry land. And he can see the eyes of the gators in the water, but for some reason the gators don't come after him. They circle around and go around him. And other snakes do as well. He can hear owls in the trees, and again, it just looks so menacing and horrible. It's so creepy. Like the swamp has a life of its own and all the sounds and things of that nature. But he also notices when the men get closer, that swamp area goes completely silent. It's as if the swamp knows something is about to happen on a monstrous scale. But the swamp also knows one thing as well. Not notices, but knows one thing as well. Somebody ain't gonna make it out of here tonight. And it's going to be part of the lore of the swamp. I'm going to leave it right there, okay? Please like, share, comment, subscribe. And hoping you guys are enjoying these stories, because again, this is just one of my hobbies. Everything is copyrighted. It's 2020. And I'm trying to shed a light and some positivity on these gloomy times that we're experiencing right now. So, yeah. I have published work already out on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Ingram, Nook, Kindle. I already have published work out right now. So check those out. I have stories for children. I have children's stories out. I have adult sci-fi. And we're trying to get the next 2 books out for each genre. So again, you guys please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, help out as much as you see fit. I have a Cash App. It's $outrage95. That's my Cash App. All donations and all help is appreciated. Okay. Again, hope you guys are having a great. I hope you guys are finding some positivity in all of this that's going on right now. Pretty tough out there, but with that being said, this has been L.A. Kendrick from the House of Havoc. Make sure you check your closets, the dark recesses of your house, under your bed. And if you happen to work at night, check around your cars, under it. Check your surroundings, because you never know what's waiting, lurking in the dark to make you a story. And this has been L.A. Kendrick. Special edition, bringing you the heavy for Breonna Taylor.